Daily Jump. And today we're traveling to Amsterdam. And we're going to be visiting with a dear friend of mine, someone that I met about 14 years ago in Washington, D.C., as I was going around pounding the pavement looking for someone whose vision in this life matched my vision in this life. And I was very fortunate and very privileged to end up in front of a very wise woman, someone who had spent a lot of her life by that point working around the world, working for peace in places of the worst conflict on this planet. She was at that time the vice president of Search for Common Ground, an incredible organization that's still around in this world. Our paths have taken different directions since those times that we worked together. And I have reconnected with Susan Collin Marks today because she is a voice that I wanted to hear and whose voice I wanted to share with you more than ever. It is with great delight that I connect with her today. She retired after 30 years of working for peace in this world, has moved to Amsterdam where she lives with her husband, and has been working on a book that I think we'll all find inspirational once it comes to publication. She's got her transcript, and I'm sure there'll be more news about that book in the days and months to come. Susan Collin Marks, it is my greatest privilege and pleasure to have this time with you today.
And I can't stop beaming to have this time with you. I'm completely delighted. Thank you for contacting me across the miles and across the hours and across the years. It's my joy to be with you.
Yes. So Susan, the reason why I wanted to speak with you today is, well, most importantly, because of who you are, not in what you've done necessarily professionally, although that speaks to the type of heart and soul that you have, because you have put into actions through your work in this world what your soul is about, but it's about what you're thinking at these times and how you see what's going on around you. So more than to talk about, what your life is like and how it's impacting you, but how you see, because you are a global person and you are connected to this planet in ways that many of us aren't. So I'd love to understand how you're viewing what's going on and receiving this time.
Well, that's a lovely way to begin. Thank you so much. It's a time that I have been expecting at some point in some form, not this form or any particular form, but a time of transformation. We have got off track, in my view, in our world. We've lost a sense of who we really are. Mm-hmm. And what I feel as we go through these days, we've been here in Amsterdam, we've been in what's called intelligent lockdown by the governments. We've been in that for 5 weeks. And because of my particular circumstances, we are allowed out to walk, and I do that, but I'm being very, very, very careful. I'm in the age range and so on where I have to be careful. And so that has pushed me back on myself, and I do feel that this is a time of reflection and stillness. And so many people are speaking to that. So many people are speaking to breathing in a new way, not just because the skies are clear and the air is clear, but within themselves as they let go of all the pressures to be something and to do something. Now, this doesn't mean that work doesn't go on, but there's a release that comes from being at home. And there's also a lot of pain and grief. There's the loss of life and livelihood. There's the feeling of change is often one that is so hard for us as humans to manage. And yet we come together in that loss and grief. We unify, we feel it together, just as we feel the celebration of the new ideas and thoughts and connectivity and inspiration that is emerging. And I hold these two at the same place: the loss of grief on the one hand, and the inspiration and the possibility on the other. And that's really where I am in at this moment in the process that we're in. I do believe we're at the very beginning of it, and that this is going to take quite a while of ups and downs and ins and outs, because massive change, which we're in, doesn't happen in a linear fashion, and it doesn't happen within a time frame. And so I'm living every day as it comes, putting one foot in front of the other, which is how I've learned to live my life over decades, especially with the work that I've done, with all its the impossibility of foretelling what will happen when I'm in the middle of conflict in any place in the world.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So you spoke of knowing that this was coming for a long time and that it was necessary. Can you speak a little bit more about what that means for you?
Well, we've needed to reset our society. In my view, this is all, nothing that I'm saying is true. It's just what I experience, and it's my truth. So let me put that right at the front of this. This is how I perceive the world around me, and the underlying world, that the web of life that we live within. So for me, there's been a deep need for a very long time to reset the injustice of our world, to reset the inequity of our world. You know, when I was in my 20s and I first began to work in after university, and I understood that I had, growing up in South Africa, I was born just about the same time that apartheid was born, growing up with that inequity, having a mother who showed that to me. She made sure that I understood, and then taught me how to have courage through the example that she set, because her courage was extraordinary. And I understood right from the beginning that what fueled me in my life was a sense of injustice and inequity. And the choice that I made at a certain point was really there waiting for me to make it, which was a choice not to be an advocate for one side or the other, but to be an advocate for finding peace between the sides, for building bridges between the sides, for creating wholeness out of what's been torn apart. Mm-hmm. And I understood that really quite early on, and found my way into then being able to live it and to act in it. And the first big place that I was able to do that was in my own South Africa's transition from apartheid to democracy, which is really where I cut my teeth, and which is so relevant today. And maybe we can come to that, because what happened in our country is happening in the world in many ways, the principles of it.
Well, tell me more about that.
You know, right.
Let's go there now.
During the transition, we had just over 4 years between the beginning of the transition, when we declared, the then president declared that we would now go to a new dispensation, and he released Nelson Mandela, and so on and so forth. And until the election. So that was the period I'm talking about. I was privileged, and it was the privilege of my life, to work right in the middle of that. Mm-hmm. And I was there the day that Nelson Mandela was released from prison, and I stood in a crowd of 80,000 people as he appeared on the steps of the City Hall in Cape Town and spoke to us for the first time. And so this is indelible in me. And as the days and weeks and months went by, And we had, despite the miracle of South Africa, which indeed it is and was, we also had tremendous violence, because when you take off the lid off oppression, everything comes out, and that's what happened there. Yeah. And some of us realized in the middle of this that what was happening, and happening very quickly, was that the old was dying, but the new was not yet born. Okay. And that's the first thing I would say, because the old is dying in front of our eyes at the moment. Yes. But the new has not yet been born. So there's a place in the middle of not knowing. There's a place where we have to just put one foot in front of the other, where we are having to trust that we will find our way. And we know that we will make mistakes. And we also know that in the end, we will find our way through this. Well, that's my own sense. I always have a deep feeling of us as humanity being guided, if only we would listen. And so that first point of the old is dying, the new is not yet born, to me, we're living it every day. And the interesting thing that we used to say, a few of us in South Africa, when we would talk at the end of the day, looking out at, perhaps sitting on the side of Table Mountain, I was in Cape Town, looking out at the lights of the city. And some of us would say, you know, it's like the death of apartheid is like a great beast dying. And that as it dies, it lashes its tail and takes with it as much as it can. It's a dangerous time, and we know that the meaning of crisis is both danger and opportunity.
Yes.
And so we understood that this was a dangerous time, that it could go either way, but I never lost that sense that it would work out. Now, South Africa is still in a healing process, but at that time we came to the place where Mandela could be elected, where we could set in place for the first time an equitable society with a Bill of Rights and with a constitution that honored all the people of South Africa. So we did it. You know, the whole of South Africa did it. I was just privileged to be a small part of that. So that was for me, that sense of what we did as a country, and now what we're doing as a world. It's as though we had a little trial run there with the country, and now we're bringing into practice. We can bring into practice what we learned there.
One of the things that stands out in what you just said, you said the new is not yet born. So one of the things that I've been exploring in this series has been both the physics of how we create our reality, and I've been speaking with artists about, because to me, artists and great thinkers of any kind, because in a way, you are an artist in my mind, you know, because you dream of what's to come, and dreamers and scientists are great minds, like scientists, artists, people like you. It's like you open yourselves up to receive something and to understand the world around you in a way that brings wisdom or knowing about a potential, right? A potential of where we can go to. And it's something that's open to each of us to, because we all in our hearts speak to us about where we would like to be. And when we start acting on it so that the new is not yet born, the importance of participating and birthing it, about whatever it is that you, in your world, however big or small that action might be, to and I think this speaks to something that you touched on. I can't remember your exact words, but to know what your gut is telling you, and to bring it in whatever big or small way you can, and act on it now. so that you help that new that birth go smoothly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that you can choose what it is that is coming to life, and how important that is right now. That's, you know, part of why I was inspired to speak to someone like you and the different people I've been speaking to, because, you know, you have a track record, so to speak, of birthing a world, a new world. You know, that's basically, you're a midwife in a way.
Yeah. Nice.
And you know, so I guess I just wanted to chime in about that new is not yet born, and it is a dangerous time, but and there's certain things we don't have control of, but we need to acknowledge those places we do have control of, and that we do have a choice in what it is that we're birthing and the process. Does that resonate with you? How does that's kind of what, you know, when I hear you say those words, that's what comes from me. That's and from this journey that I've been on the last 33 days talking to incredible people.
Well, you know, yes, it does resonate deeply, and thank you for that. And the last piece that you said, where what we do have control of is our response. We cannot control the fact that this has come. We now have coronavirus in our midst. There's nothing we can do about it. Just as when a lot of things happen, people who would get elected into power, or wars, or natural event disasters, we do not have control, but how we respond, we have absolute control over. And that's the key in life, in my view, is to recognize that we always have, as you said, a choice about how we respond. And so we can respond to this with fear, or we can respond to this with love. And fear and love are opposites, not love and hate, as often people say. But fear is the opposite of love. Fear is the source of hate and anger and aggression. And love is inclusive. Love opens things up. Love heals, makes whole. Fear closes things down. So we've always got that choice from our everyday interactions, particularly with our families. I mean, they're the biggest testing grounds we have, by the way, are our families. I mean, that's where we really that's where we really learn all the lessons we need to learn in our families.
Yes.
And then we take those out into the world, and we're tested all along. And we really have got choices to make. And I look back on my life and I see where I've made good choices, and I see where I haven't made good choices. And so what I know is that I just keep coming back to center and keep going. And once again, I'm presented with possibility. Once again, I make those choices.
Yes.
And when we think of love, when I first went to Washington, D.C. in the early 90s, to be with John and to join a very young and small search for common ground at that time, I remember using the word love. I was asked to do a lot of public speaking at that time, because there I was, a real live person from the front lines of South Africa. And there weren't many of us. People would come and go, and I was living there. So I did a lot of speaking. And I began very early on to talk about love. And it was a shock to people. The L word was almost worse than a swear word. To talk about love in the atmosphere there. But it was also something that touched many people deeply, not all people, because we all resonate to love, and what we understand at a very deep level, and sometimes and often don't articulate or haven't really found the words for, is that love is the most powerful energy in our universe. It's the fuel of our universe. And we can think of love in very many different ways. One way we can think of it is wanting the highest good for the other. And if we want the highest good for ourselves and the other, not just for ourselves, it changes everything. Mm-hmm. When we think of love as compassion, and truthfulness and care and kindness, it changes everything. When we think of love as connecting, and when we think of love as bringing the real essence of who we are, the spirit of who we are, to connect with the essence and spirit of who somebody else is, we transform ourselves and each other. Watch the way when we smile at somebody in the street, how they smile back.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, in the smallest things we can bring love. That smile is an act of love. An act of kindness to a stranger is an act of love. So it depends on how we see these things. That's how I see it. So for me, this is a time of love just emerging in how people are taking care of each other. For instance, I'm used to being the carer. I'm used to being the one who goes out and helps everybody else. But I'm 70 and I have an underlying health condition and I can't do that. And it's a great shock to my system. And I'm being offered all this help from younger people, you know, youngsters in their 40s and 50s, as their 20s and 30s. And I'm saying, yes, thank you. And so I'm learning to receive love in the form of help from others and to accept that at this time, I cannot do that kind of help, but I can do other kinds, being in contact with people, spending time with people on Zoom and in other ways. So love to me is one of the biggest emergent words and factors in our life today. And I see it all around. I see it in the front lines. I watched the recent video made in a hospital with the people in the front lines of coronavirus, the doctors and nurses, but also the porters and the other healthcare workers and the cleaners and everybody putting themselves on the line for the rest of us. I was in complete floods of tears throughout it. And I saw it all as an act of love.
Yeah.
I saw it as that. And then even here, the people who are choosing to go everywhere, the people who choose to go and work in the grocery store. Now, people need jobs at the same time. Here, particularly, their choices, because the government steps in and helps people enormously. They get tremendous amount of financial support. But people are choosing to do that because it's needed. And that's love. And shops are opening an hour earlier so that people over 70 can go in early and have an hour without all those contaminated young people running around. And so this to me is all acts of love. We can talk about compassion and care and all the other words. And they, of course, reflect the African idea of Ubuntu. I am because you are. And we all are because of each other. But I am because you are is what Ubuntu means. And it means all these words that I'm talking about, the kindness and the care and the consideration. So that's the first thing I am really feeling and seeing. The words are coming into my head. I feel it in my heart. My intuition in my gut tells me, yes, this is us moving forward into reclaiming our birthright. And our birthright is to live together on this planet, not without conflict, because conflict is incredibly important. It's how we handle it that counts.
Yes.
Conflict means that we have different ideas, different purposes, different thoughts. So it's not that we won't have conflict, but we will handle it, and we are learning to handle it in a different kind of way that doesn't immediately cause violence and split us apart, but actually brings us together and heals us all. So these are just, I mean, you're going to have to stop me, because this is something I have all the time, and I'm spending a lot of time with this.
I don't want to stop you. Why would I want to stop you?
Bring back Nelson Mandela, bring him back home.